I used to do the headphone, like the, wired headphones too. I'll still do it sometimes, but I don't know.
Hot ears though, man. I'd be doing them Twitch streams. I'm getting some hot ears.
Dude. Yeah, absolutely. How much are you streaming these days?
I do every Monday night, unless I'm flying. And dude, yeah, I just wanted to say real quick, like, thanks for you've given me a lot of inspiration in the space of bringing people on and talking to them and having these open conversations, because I've been doing a lot of guest stuff on my streams. Awesome. For the last 8 months. We'll bring a special guest on every time. We'll talk for an hour or whatever. And it's just dope. I just want to thank you for paving the way, because I've been watching your stuff for a long time. Whenever it pops
that's so
up.
cool, dude. I really appreciate that. Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, I remember, I don't know if you remember, but that's how I met you originally. Was you and I did a Twitch stream during the pandemic for Monster Cat. That was I was doing a few interviews, kind of like a round robin. So it was everyone was hopping on for 20 minutes and then someone else would hop on. And I think you were one of those. And so we talked for probably about 20 minutes on a Monster Cat stream once. And that was the first time I met you.
I remember that. Well, yeah, that's how I got introduced to your material. Yes.
Yeah. Which was crazy, because I was stoked when I saw we were coming to do this here, because I was like, I think didn't I talk to him? And then I was looking and I was like, it wasn't on the podcast. I couldn't figure it out. And finally I realized it was that Monster Cat stream, which
crazy.
It's funny, because doesn't that seem like another lifetime ago, streaming during the pandemic, even though it wasn't really that long ago?
Yes. And I, weirdly enough, picked up till after the pandemic. I didn't start streaming until afterwards. So
right.
all backwards for me, as always. Everything is.
I don't know, man. In some ways, I think it's smart, because so many people abandoned Twitch the second they could, the second they could get back to doing live shows or any of that. And I stayed on there for a little bit, but I'm mostly off of there now too. And I'll still go back there. And it's I liked Twitch. I still like Twitch. I think it's a cool community. I think it's a really cool way to connect with people who like what you do if you're a creator. And so I don't know, man. I think in some ways it's cool that you're doing it now, maybe more so than during the pandemic, just because probably there's less creators on there, at least for what we do,
Sure. Yeah. It's been great. I love it. I feel like it's the only place where I feel like I can be myself fully, because I'm committing to doing a live stream. So I can just be myself. I don't have to be myself in a video form that I then am going to decide to publish somewhere. Yeah. I can just kind of be myself, and there's a chat. It's a great place to connect with everybody. That's where my core group gets together the most, is on the Twitch streams and Discord off stream and all that stuff.
Oh, that's so cool, man. That's a really good, I never thought about it exactly that way, but you're right. It's a little more raw. It's direct to consumer. It's there's no editing. There's no multiple takes of something, which really is, if I think about it, that is the big bummer of social media. It's not so much I think all of us love interacting with people who like what we do. Mm-hmm. That, of course, obviously, but it's really, more the presentational nature of it, the feeling like you got to be a performer in other ways than the way you want to perform. Sure. That's the big bummer. Sure. So yeah, that's a good way to look at it, man. But no, dude, I'm so stoked you're here. I didn't mean to just jump into it. It's great to see you, man. How are you?
Dude, I'm good, man. I'm very stoked for this. I really appreciate the time, and it's great to be back chatting. I'm great. I'm doing good. I'm just playing shows, making music, trying to put out more music. There's a big initiative to be sharing more music and publishing more music out there. So everything's just great, man. When I'm active and posting music and playing shows, I am at my best place in life.
Yeah. Is that for you when you feel not necessarily happiest, but like, is that a happy place for you? Is like kind of when everything's, you're past the prep stage and like everything's just kind of moving and it's kind of just trying to like keep the balls in the air, keep the machine going.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just feel happy when I get to share music with people in any way, share the stuff I make. And honestly, it's weird. It's like, I'm also in this phase where I'm trying to like kind of figure out what's next. And I feel like everyone I talk to is also in this phase as well. A lot of artists, they're trying to figure out, well, should I be releasing with labels? Should I be self-releasing? Should we just start putting stuff up on SoundCloud again? Should I start teasing all my demos on TikTok? Should I start this and that? So I don't know. I feel really good in that I think that there is a kind of an open slate canvas type of thing going on, that I'm going to try and take advantage of by just releasing music and doing my favorite thing anyway, and seeing what happens.
Yeah, dude, I bet you have an interesting perspective on all of that, because you're right. Everybody I talk to is in that exact same space of trying to figure out how to navigate the current like ecosystem of the industry. What are the best practices? What should I be doing? What shouldn't I be doing? All of that. But to me, I feel like you may have an interesting perspective, because you're hard to pin down, it's like, it's hard to say you're one kind of artist versus another, that you're in one scene versus another. You straddle a lot of lines, which I think is very good and is exactly why people love what you do. But at the same time, I can imagine a lot of situations where either somebody external, like a label or a manager or something, tries to pin you down at a certain point, or tries to, maybe has a vision for, say, no, let's try to, brand you as this kind of artist. Let's try to get you in this kind of world. Mm-hmm. This is kind of a broad, rambling question, but I mean, from your experiences thus far, like, have you learned anything about being able to stick to a unique sound, but still be able to present it in a way that people can connect to?
Sure. I mean, I've kind of been in and out of a lot of like label situations. I've been in and a lot of, like you said, I straddle a lot of lines with my music. But I think the most important thing I've tried to do, and I've never faltered on, was always just kind of being myself and putting out the stuff that I believe in. And I think it's helped me. It's been a slower build, but it's helped me cultivate a group of people that truly just like what I make. And, it's not as easy to harness the power of a massive EDM crowd or a massive dubstep crowd, where it's like, they hear one thing and they'd like you to reproduce that thing 1,000 times or whatever it is. But I think just kind of sticking to my guns a little bit. I mean, I've learned a lot by experience, a lot of different labels. You should do this, you should do that. And which label am I going to partner with that's going to bring my stuff to the next level? And which label can I partner with that's going to allow me to almost A&R my own stuff and kind of, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's been interesting, kind of just sticking to my guns. And now it's gotten to a place where I am far more focused on my community and my small group of fans than I am anyone else.
I think that's the way it should be, man. Focusing on the smaller community, this is what I'll say, is I think not only smart in this modern era from a business perspective, but I think it's also smart in a artist creativity sense. Because I think when you really connect with the people who like you, who like you for just the way you see the music landscape, what comes out of your brain, I think that gives you some kind of inner confidence too, to just keep following that rather than trying to satisfy some larger part of the ecosystem that in reality, kind of only cares about you when you're really hot or really on trend. And I think for a lot of artists, that can be disorienting when either you're getting all of that love and then it's taken away, or you're not getting it with something you think is really good. Both of those things, I think, can throw artists way off course. So I think you're completely right. It's like, just focusing on the community is got to be the way to go.
Yeah, you can't really connect with a mass audience. It's kind of, I just think it's got to go the other way around. You have to connect with your core. The mass audience will the core will grow, but you know, it's almost like these giant bands, like, you know, we just went and saw Pearl Jam last night. Like, you know, Pearl Jam, massive international success, you know, just gigantic, absolutely gigantic. 2 nights at the Kia Forum, this whole thing, you know, and it's like, I know that they're geared towards their fan club, you know, like how bands used to have fan clubs, you know, now we have like Facebook groups and we have like this kind of other weird versions of fan clubs. And it's like, it's for them, you know, it's like, you know, they're going to buy both nights. So, you know, spread it out so that they get a unique set both nights. Like, it's more geared towards them. Everyone else comes secondary.
Yeah. Yeah, Pearl Jam's a really good example, I think, because obviously, I mean, they were, you know, a massively successful band, but it's not like they've had a bunch of radio hits in the last 10 years. You know, they've just sort of they achieved whatever level of success they achieved. And since then, really have just been serving their fans, serving their community.
Yes.
And it's a great way to look at it, man, because whatever level of success you get to, that's kind of the only way to do it. You just made me think of, I was reading an interview. It's like one of those artist to artist interviews where they have 2 different artists interviewing each other. And it was, those are always the best. And it was, I don't know if you know these people, but 2 DJs, Nick Catchdubs, who runs Fool's Gold Records, and Jubilee, who's an amazing New York DJ who's got a label of her own. And they were just going back and forth talking about kind of these ideas. And Nick was saying something that really resonated with me, which is that there's kind of just a couple basic rules that will never change in the industry, which is that, first of all, the music has to be good. Like the product actually has to be good. Or if it's not, maybe with millions and millions of dollars, you could get people to listen to it a little bit or make some weird viral thing, but it's not going to last. It's not going to be anything significant. So the music has to be good, first of all. And then from that, you can't manufacture a viral moment. You can't manufacture a hit. If the music is good, that gives you a better probability of having a hit or having a moment. But what he was saying that really connected with me was that, okay, so say the music's good and say you hit a moment and, you know, all of a sudden you, whatever, you know, hit the right time, right place, your song starts blowing up. That's pretty much the only time when pumping a bunch of money into something, you know, getting a budget involved, all that is really going to have a huge effect for you. Because if there's already interest and the song is already good, then for sure, getting it in front of more people's eyes can kind of grow that organic moment. But otherwise,
the domino,
you know, again, you can pay money for more people to see it. But even if the song is good, if it's not having a moment, you can't just throw money to manufacture a moment, you know, and I think something about that to me connects back to what we were just talking about of, you know, actual connections with people who actually like what you do, where it has to come from like an organic seed before any of the branding and money and marketing gets involved.
Yeah. I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. That's totally true.
Yeah, I don't know that I even had a point about that, but I was just thinking about that because I read that this morning.
Dude, how cool is it to be interviewing people? When did you start interviewing? I don't mean to turn this whole thing around. Yeah, well, I'm interested to know.
Absolutely. I mean, it's super interesting for me, man. I started this podcast. It's crazy. It's been almost 8 years now.
Wow.
I was listening to a lot of other podcasts from like comedians or actors having these kinds of conversations and just kind of wondering why no one was doing it for us. And yeah, because, you know, it's like we all know plenty of interesting people with cool stories, crazy people who will say weird stuff, you know, like funny people, all that kind of stuff. And so it was one of those where I didn't really feel like I was that qualified to do it. But I was like, after a while, I was like, oh man, I know it's
Someone's
a good
gotta take
idea.
the leap.
I should probably just do it. And so I kind of just started without having a lot of knowledge about it. And I don't know, it just took on a life of its own, man. It's been really cool.
So cool. You go every week you do, or you just schedule as many as you can?
Yeah, it's every week. I mean, the scheduling, I'm sure you know this too from like talking to people and then editing clips and all that. But it's like, it's really the scheduling and then the like post-production stuff that is annoying. The actual conversations are great. You know, it's like that never gets old.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Who are you talking to on your streams?
Who have we had on? We had Rezz was one of the biggest ones. That so many people tuned into that one. It was crazy. We celebrated her album release. That was really fun.
Oh, cool.
Had Subtronics. A lot of my collaborators, like I just hit up, to come on. Sullivan King. We had Lucille Croft was the first one I think to ever come on as a special guest because we had a song come out. Eliminate a lot of just friends, and then I always said that I was going to start with friends and then I'll start branching off into, who can we aim at that is, hard to get.
That's exactly how I did it, man. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, that's already a great roster of names, man. I feel like with just those people alone, you could go out and get a bunch more people you don't know.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Because I have a good relationship with Twitch and we've been working together now like 8 months. I got in with them through Riot Games, all the stuff I do for Valorant. So we did like a track breakdown for the Valorant Champions theme. And then like I was able to do an album breakdown for when I released my album. And they kind of like helped us get in front of a ton of people, put us on the front page and all that kind of stuff. So it's just been rolling from there, and it's been incredible. Oh,
that's so cool, man. Well, if there's ever anyone you're having trouble reaching, if there's anything I can do to help, let me know, man. Because I'm happy to help out, man. Because that sounds.
You
really
should
cool.
come on. We should interview you about interviewing people,
dude. Absolutely, yeah. Anytime, man. I'd be happy to. That'd be fun. Be fun to reconnect with Twitch a little bit too. But wait, I want to ask you. You were talking about you've got a new track out right now with IMANU. Who I've had IMANU on this podcast, and I love him. I wanted to ask you a little bit about that track because he's such an interesting dude. And I was sort of wondering if you guys connected, what am I trying to say? Like almost aesthetically in a way, because I think he's another person who defies categorization a little bit.
Yeah, sure. We met randomly through a session that got set up. It was me, IMANU, and Nightpunk.
Oh yeah, shout out to Nightpunk. He's great too.
Yeah, both such incredible artists and producers, and technical and stylistic, and the whole thing. I could go on for a long time, but I met with them and I was familiar with their work, so I was like, yeah, hell yeah, I'll do this session. So we all met, we all connected like very quickly, very easily. We shared a few songs. We're just chatting, and we started something and. It ended up not being what me and IMANU ended up working on this track. It was some other track that's out there in the ether somewhere. But yeah, we just really connected, and we talked shop, we talked production, we talked vocals, we talked a lot of stuff. And then he kind of just threw me this idea at one point. We kept in touch, and he threw me this idea, and it's kind of just like once it already gets to that point where you connect with somebody, it's seamless. There's no more like, oh, should I reach out to him about this? Should we finish that, or whatever it is? It would be cool to get a collab with him. We should make this cross the finish line. Like it'll just cross or it won't cross. That's like kind of what I've learned is that like if you vibe with somebody and you got a track together and you both want to finish it, like it's just gonna come out at some point.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. I recorded my vocals. I added a couple of little production bits here and there and sent it back to him. And it just kind of happens quick,
That's cool, man. Yeah,
it definitely connect.
It felt like something a little different for both of you guys. Yeah, it was cool to hear, man. Because he's just an interesting dude. And he's another one where I feel like probably a lot of people would like to box him in a little bit, and he just keeps breaking out of whatever that is.
Yeah, I see it happen a lot in bass music. It's like you have to be a certain thing in
Yeah.
bass music. And I just, I get it, but at the same time, it's like, there are a lot of interesting things happening that don't exactly fit that mold. And it should be embraced. I mean, it's like IMANU is like one of the top respected producers amongst my peers that I know, like, just as far as technicality and style and taste. And, I mean, the dude's making records with like Noisia. I mean,
yeah.
These are like heroes of ours that taught us everything we know about, what a mix should even sound like.
Yeah.
So it's just, it is cool. I hope that there are more unique things that start to come up and bubble up. And, I'd sing during my sets. I try and produce my own kind of little style of performance. And I'm just trying to bring something different to the table, that can live in that world, but also evolve into a different world. My goal is to obviously have my own thing, a more live centric, bass music infused, rock music infused experience type of thing.
Yeah, man. I mean, when I listen to your music, I'm probably not saying anything you haven't already thought 1,000 times, but I could see a live show at a rock festival just as easily as like a bass music festival. And I mean, am I right too that I feel like a lot of times your music will come out and you get playlisted on like rock and metal playlists just as much as bass music, depending on the song?
Sure. Yeah, a lot of the alternative stuff. I mean, doing that song with Rezz, Someone Else, back in 2020, really busted open a lot of doors for me in the alternative world. I was able to make a lot of relationships over there and kind of just learn how that world works, which is kind of funny because it's its own little ecosystem. It's like bass music, it's its own little ecosystem. Alternative rock is its own little ecosystem, and it's funny to see how they kind of compare and contrast and stuff.
What were, if you can name any of them, like what are the differences or similarities you saw? Because I don't know anything about the like alternative rock world.
I mean, for me, just the thing I noticed the most is it's a lot more radio based. There's a radio game involved with all of it. It's like if you can get certain steam going on the radio, then it's a lot of people think radio could be dead or something. It's not. Yeah. It's definitely not. Yeah. Terrestrial radio is massive. People listen to radio all the time, and sometimes when these songs go top 10, and they are dumping money into the promotion of them, and they go like top 10 and they go number 1, they'll stay there for a long time. Then you get like a real hit, like a real gold, platinum, potentially, record. Yeah. And that's what happened to our song, Rezz and I. That's what happened is basically like the label pumped a bunch of money into alternative radio. That's how it got so much steam. It had its organic moment. Obviously, Rezz's fans are just fucking feral. They're crazy. Yeah, they're awesome. And there was an organic moment because she delved into this more, vocal, more like, palatable type of thing with a chorus and, all this stuff. So that went crazy, and the radio promotion, and it kind of just all mixed together. But yeah, it's like there's the radio aspect of it, and there's also the aspect of it of just like who's consistently releasing. You can't just like put all your eggs in the basket and then like just go at it. It's like labels will probably dump a lot of money into just, here, we're going to try this one at radio. If that doesn't work, we're going to do this one. If that doesn't work, we're going to do this one. And that's kind of what I see in EDM as well.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, traditionally, dance music has been more singles based, whereas I feel like rock is more album based. But I wonder in this day and age, it's probably, I'm just speculating, but I feel like it's probably all kind of becoming the same of just trying to get the one single to pop. And if you can make it pop and you have something to follow it up with, that's the ideal situation. But yeah, I don't know that. I wonder if they're still trying to promote albums the same way in the rock world.
Yeah, they do. They do. And it's like an album touring cycle type of thing. It used to be purely album touring cycle. You tour the album. Now it's kind of like you tour and the music promotes the tour, that type of thing. It's a little bit backwards, but I truly don't think anyone has fully figured it out. I think that there's just creative people trying to take advantage of the landscape. And when something seems to work, kind of everyone says, "Oh, that worked." When did it become a singles based thing?
Right.
You know, when somebody's singles plan worked.
Yeah, that's
We're
a
just going to
great
keep
point.
doing singles, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, we got to go away from albums. You know, the singles is what's really popping, one song at a time. I don't know. You know.
Yeah. No, it's a great point.
I'm trying new stuff, and we'll see what happens. It's like I'm kind of in a phase personally where I would like to try different things and see what happens when you release a single that's got 2 other songs attached to it.
Right.
You know, do the 2 other songs just die, or are your fans happy because they get 3 songs now? You know,
yeah, absolutely.
like
Dude, I mean, yeah, people are doing interesting stuff. I've seen people kind of doing what you're saying, where they'll release a single, then a couple months later release another single with the old single now kind of being the B-side. And
the waterfall.
Yeah, waterfall. That's exactly right. Yeah. And that's a new one to me. I hadn't seen that until recently. But I really like what you're saying too, which is that with any of these methods, somebody had to do it first, right? And at that time, it was unproven, and probably a lot of people were scratching their heads saying, "What are you doing?" But that's the way any of these systems get devised, is, you know, somebody has a weird idea and they try it out. And especially in 2024, I think you're right that it would behoove any up and coming artist to try whatever ideas you got, because I think they're an advantage of kind of the chaotic era we're in right now, is that there is more movement and more opportunity to sort of try out of the box ideas, and you know, I think less downside to taking a risk.
Totally, dude. I remember people ask me all the time. They're trying to say, how do I get my songs to a label, or how do I get my song? Like, what's even the first step? And I'll just tell them that, like, my goal when I was first starting to produce dance music heavily and all of that stuff, and had nothing, and was trying to get on labels, or my dream label was Monster Cat. And I remember writing it down. I'm like, I'm going to get to these guys. I'm going to get a song to these guys. It was all pegboard nerds. I was learning from the artists that were releasing on there. And all I was doing was just putting my stuff on SoundCloud. I was just putting it up. It just doesn't matter whether or not it does good or bad. And those songs that I ended up putting up got somebody at Monster Cat to say what's up to me.
Right.
So you just don't know, and you have to take shots, and you have to take risks, and you have to, like, I don't know. There's so much, so many more negatives with, like, being fragile about how many views something might get, how many streams something might get. You know, it's like a blow to your ego or something. It's like, there's so many more risks to not do it than to do it, you know?
Yeah, well, 100%. And to not pin all of your hopes on, you know, one song or one idea, when the reality is too that it's probably going to take longer than you want it to, or at least you should approach it like that. And just look at it as, you know, kind of you're paving a path to where you want to get. It's not that, you know, you post up a song, maybe it's not going to blow up the way you wanted it to, but maybe that song leads to another song, leads to another song that, you know, 10 songs down the road, a year later, whatever it is, you get to where you wanted to go because you posted the first one back then, you know?
Exactly. A lot of people say it's a marathon, not a sprint, you know?
Oh, man.
I'm saving even more. I'm walking. I'm going to save all my energy, dude. You're going to, like, be real tired at one point. I'm just going to walk by.
Dude, straight up. And and the marathon thing too is another thing I talk about on the podcast all the time, is that over a long career, you're going to have to reinvent yourself a few times. You're going to have to throw everything out the window a few times. You're going to think it's all over a few times. You know, there's all of that, man. There's no way. I mean, it makes me wonder for you, man, talking about, like, posting songs to SoundCloud and wanting to get on Monster Cat. How old were you when you were doing that? How long ago was that?
It was when all the Monster Cat stuff started was 2014. So
like a decade ago now.
2012, what was it? Yeah, it was over a decade ago. I was really infatuated with figuring out how to do the dance music sound. And I was, quite an avid producer at that time. So I was just like, hey, I need to figure this out. There's, nothing I can't figure out type of thing. So
were you doing like rock stuff before then?
A lot of hip hop beats, a lot of songs, with kind of more hip hoppy beats. And then as the dance music thing came in, I started hearing the noises. I was like incorporating some of those noises into the beats. And then I was like, because I actually didn't even dare to try some of the things that I was hearing, like listening to, obviously everyone's got the same story. So I'm just going to become a robot person, but hearing Scary Monsters, Skrillex, Scary Monsters,
of course,
it just didn't equate to me how the sounds were being made. That's just even pulling like a synth in and like automating it in some way to have like a movement to it. It wasn't how I worked. I would pull up like synthesizers and skim through the presets and like listen to the noises and then pick one,
Right.
Modulating it in that way where it's almost talking or it's, walking and talking and doing all this stuff. It just was crazy. So it slowly started to transition a little bit and, it spiraled out of control. And then once I kind of figured out how to do that, it was almost like a blessing and a curse. Cause it's like, you figure out how to do it. No one's ever like, mastered it. And, but once you figure out how to do bass music and you figure out the innards and the EDM mix down thing where you're mixing as you go and you're, I tell you, it makes a lot easier to mix a rock song, makes it a lot easier to mix a beat, make a beat. And then you kind of have this blank canvas. And I've been like blank canvassing for a long time. That's why I'm all over the place.
Well, I mean, okay. So speaking of all over the place, like normally I wouldn't even ask somebody about their influences because I think that's kind of an overdone interview question. But
oh, no, I ask everybody about their influence. I need to learn. Okay. So influences.
I mean, this is to be fair, overplayed. This is just me being a pretentious asshole. But I feel like, most interviews I see with people, like even if I'm researching someone getting ready to interview them, I look at old interviews and like every interview, that's always a question, which I get. It is an interesting question, but I think it's particularly interesting for you because you're talking about, coming to dance music from hip hop beat making, but you're also talking about going to see Pearl Jam. I hear when you sing on shit, like to me, it sounds very reminiscent of like 90s alt rock and like 90s metal, like vocal inflections and tones. I don't even know how old you are or if you were listening to that back in the day, but it's just very interesting. Like growing up, what was around you? Like, what were you hearing? Where did this all start as far as like music really turning on a light bulb for you?
Growing up was, first of all, it's cool that you can hear that kind of stuff. That's awesome. That lets me know that I'm at least utilizing the influences correctly. But it was all rock growing up. I was born in 93, 31. So, I was a bit too young to experience grunge, but I experienced it in a way where I don't know what happened, but like songs that came out in 1993 were like still bumping on the radio in like 1999.
It's true.
Now a song comes out and it's like, and it's over in like 2 seconds, Well,
maybe that goes back to the power forever. Of terrestrial radio a bit too, because terrestrial radio in the 90s had a chokehold on American pop culture. And so, yeah, if there was a song that they just kept playing, it was going to stay popular 100%.
Exactly. Like, I'll never forget. I used to call in and like request songs and stuff. Like, I'll never forget. I used to just wait until Closer by Nine Inch Nails would play. I would just wait. And it was crazy because like that came out in 1994. So I wasn't waiting when I was 1.
Right.
I was waiting to hear it when I was like 6 or 5 or 6,
I did the same thing. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So it's crazy. Songs had a lot more lasting power then, but yeah, it was all rock. it was all the grunge scene. It was all the typical stuff. I mean, and hip hop as well, you know, like I was pretty versed in hip hop then. And then I think like as time went by, when rock evolved to emo rock and like the Warped Tour world, I just went hip hop. So I totally culturally missed the whole My Chemical Romance thing, like all of that. I missed it. And I loved like Helena and like some of their big hits and stuff. And I actually have like the first song I ever covered was Helena. Is like my little baby prepubescent voice. Is so funny. But yeah, I like missed that whole thing, went to hip hop pretty much exclusively.
That's interesting. Not to interrupt you, but I kind of did exactly the same thing.
No way.
Yeah. The emo thing just never really connected for me. And I can go back and appreciate some of the tunes now, but it just wasn't my thing. And I got super into hip hop around that time too.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's weird, you know, and it's like you never make the conscious choice. You just kind of, you know, move where you move around.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting. I mean, I wonder if, you know, you're 5 years old, 6 years old, whatever it is, hearing some of this alt rock stuff, and then later on, you end up singing like some of that stuff you were listening to super early on. I mean, I wonder if part of it is just that. It's like something you hear before you're even consciously thinking about your own tastes that then later influences you, you know?
It was weird though. I have always, there was never, I talked to a lot of people that they're like, yeah, I grew up and I was like just a kid. And then like when I was like 15, I like started thinking DJing was cool or like something like that. I was like music. I was music. Like the second I could talk, I was music. I was like singing before I could talk even.
Oh, wow.
It was constant. So like I knew when I was 5 years old, I actually was like studying music on like a deep level. Like I would listen to it and try and pick it apart and all that stuff. So I've like never known anything else.
That's fascinating, man. Was there any like history of that in your family? Anybody else musical?
Just love for music. You know, I think actually my grandma's some there's like, you know, everyone would sing and stuff. And then I think one of my grandma's relatives was like a singer.
Right.
But like, yeah, you know, me and my mom would bond over different stuff. Me and my dad would bond over different stuff. And it just grew into this like palette of stuff and just loving it so deeply that picking apart certain things and getting into like conversations about just how brilliant this lyric is or whatever. I mean, just it was forever. So
that's so cool, man. I mean, I think sometimes that's all it takes is that it's not like your family has to be virtuosos or touring musicians or anything, but I think it's just about encouraging a kid to follow whatever they're excited about, whatever they're into. If you're just like, cool, man, go for it. I think that just that can be so helpful. Am I right? I read that you were writing songs by like age 8 or 9.
Pretty much. Yeah. Like 7, I remember we like moved into a new house, and at 7, I had I had like an acoustic guitar. Maybe it was 8. I don't know. I had like an acoustic guitar, had a little notepad, had the lyrics written out. And I'm like, hey, I have like a full song, and I like played it for everyone, and they were just like, what the fuck is going on? Like it's an actual song. Like the lyrics weren't bad. I could probably still sing the song to this day. Like it's just it was just a little culmination of all my influences then, you know.
Was
just
there
without the experience?
Was there anybody else? Like, did you have other friends who were super into music? Did you have any kind of crew that you were like exploring this world with, or was it really just all internal?
Kind of all internal. I mean, it was kind of all internal. I got to say, like, you know, I credit a lot to my dad for encouraging me to get into some of the older stuff and just learn like where it all came from. You know, you can't love the 90s rock without knowing, you know, what came before that, and, you know, what came before that and what came before that. So it got to the point where I kind of just felt like I had to educate myself on all this. And I used to just like crate dig in iTunes. Like I would have iTunes and like I would just explore so many different kinds of music. And it was like right when it turned into the iTunes era. So you could just access anything. You get a 30-second preview of absolutely anything. I could only imagine what it would be like if I had something like Spotify. Yeah, it was mostly internal. I mean, as I grew up and got more experienced with music and like, you know, really started to draw in anyone that was a bit more musical, my buddies, we would all love rap and we would make beats and, you know, we'd come over and I'll record you. And it was all that kind of fun stuff. But
yeah,
no, it's like same reason why I was never in a band. You know, I just never.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is my next question because I'm relating to a lot of what you're saying. Did it ever feel lonely in a sense of like, I want to find more people to connect with about this. I want to do this with people, or was it more just that you love this so much that it kind of wasn't even really a thought and you were just doing it anyway?
Probably the latter, to be honest. I mean, like once it got to the point where I was actually able to like sequence songs like on a computer, like in GarageBand, it was a level of obsession that I could just never explain. I mean, it's the same way when anyone becomes like really good at something and they're just, you can't think about anything else. Every bit of free time, you know, probably more free time than I even had. I mean, the schoolwork would be massively neglected. A lot of stuff would be massively neglected because I was just in this program trying to figure out how to stack things on top of each other, you know? So
yeah. And I mean, it sounds like you knew from pretty early on that this was something you wanted to do professionally, that like this wasn't going to be just sort of a hobby for you.
Definitely. I just didn't know what it was or how to navigate it. Or like, I knew like my heroes, like at one point I started stacking up so many beats and I was just, you know, my main hero at the time, Timbaland, you know, I was like, okay, this dude, he's making beats for everybody, you know, Timbaland, Pharrell, all the, you know, Dr. Dre, all these guys. I'm just like, they're making beats for everyone. I wonder how that happens. You know, I wonder if they just stack them like how I am. And then they, you know, what, do they send them out? Do they whatever? So I just didn't know how it was all going to work. So I was just stacking and just learning, you know.
Did you ever get more into the hip hop world in terms of being a producer? Was there a point where you were like sending out beats to a lot of people?
There was, you know, a few weird instances, you know, growing up and, you know, this or that. This guy can help you, that guy can help you. But no, it never anything that was significant. You know, and then it's so funny because just everything kind of took me in this one direction. And now I'm a lot older and I have, you know, still have a vault of just beats. I'm still trying to find the time and the methodology to get these beats out there, you know? So it's like, it's funny. Not too much has changed, actually. You just still have to just meet people and send shit out. Like no matter what stage of your career you're at, you have to just meet people, send stuff to people, send stuff out into the world and just expand outward. That's it.
Yeah, you're right. In a weird way, it sort of works the same always, you know, at whatever level you're at. That's absolutely
so true.
Right.
What about you? Do you produce, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's how I got into this world too. I had similar kind of musical interests, like in the same order as you, because I grew up a metalhead, and you know, this was like late '90s, so I was listening to, you know, Korn and Limp Bizkit, a lot of the new metal stuff.
Yes,
and at the same time, getting into raves. Like I grew up in Minnesota, and I was going to raves in the late '90s locally that, you know, were blowing my mind with, I got super into like drum and bass and happy hardcore, and like the more out there stuff was what drew me in at first. And then, went off to college and got really into hip hop, still going to raves as well. And then out of college is really when I started making a lot of music, and I was DJing sort of the whole time through, but it got more serious and turned into an actual career out of college. What about for you, man? You know, you said you're planning on a bunch of new stuff. Is there what does the vision look like, either long term or near term, for you as far as how you're rolling stuff out these days?
There's just going to be more music. You know, there is a plan. I'm not going to come right out with it yet because, like I said, you know, everything that I want to do now is all direct to my core group. They're the first to find out about everything. They're the first to get access to absolutely anything. So, you know, the thing I will say is that there is a plan. It's abundant, and, you know, it's consistent, and it's hopefully going to give anyone who's a fan of my music, you know, what they want. And it'll give me what I want, because I just love putting music out. And I like, my favorite thing in the world is putting something out that I just made.
That is a good feeling. Yeah.
It's just great. So I'm able to do that now, you know, setting up Blue Butterfly Records and stuff. Like, I'm able to do that. And there's no pressure anymore. I don't feel that there's too much reason to put so much pressure on one release or one album or whatever it is. You know, you just kind of compete with yourself and you try and grow little bits at a time.
Yeah, it's such a smart thing, man. Yeah, I love hearing you say all this because it's very spot on, but it's something that I think a lot of people get a little lost in the sauce and need to be reminded of, that's the core really of what we do. Did you ever, this is sort of a tangential question, but it's something I was curious about, because I think a lot of people may have learned about you initially from some of the high profile collabs you did with people we mentioned. And I've talked to other people who are more sort of strictly vocalists on this show. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten, a lot of feedback, and just from friends I know, that the role of like the featured vocalist in dance music can kind of be a tricky thing, where you can get on big songs, but then it ends up being, the producer or the main artist who gets a lot of the benefit of those songs. And for you, I was just curious how you've sort of navigated that, because I think you've managed to really carve out, a space for yourself as just a pure artist who is able to go and work with big names, but then doesn't exactly get overshadowed, still has your own thing. Like, was that a thing you had to navigate early on?
I mean, it's weird. I totally get the angle of how it is a tricky thing, and how someone could get placed into a tricky situation. I do think vocals and being able to produce a really good vocal is a hot commodity, and can very easily be taken advantage of. You can very easily produce 10 great vocals, put them in a folder, send them around, get them all cut with different producers, and all of the songs are just going to sound like them. And that you're the feature, I mean, and then where does that leave you? But like, for some reason, every collaboration, or even sometimes strictly feature, I mean, there's nothing to be longed for when it's just like, yo, this is a feature. Like, right. I literally sang over your beat. Like, it's all good. Like, and I love it and it's great. Put it out. Like, but a lot of the features and collaborations that I've done have just kind of happened so organically, that, and with people who really do understand, what we do here in making art and being artists and stuff. So it's like, I've never been really like kind of shafted on anything. I've never like contributed a bunch to something and had somebody be like, oh, you're just a feature or something. 'Cause it just seems like I haven't worked with those kinds of people. Like, everyone that I've worked with, some of the most high profile people are the most giving when it comes to credit. And they're the most giving when it comes to, oh, you can be, even if it is a feature, here, just be a primary artist, get the streams, like whatever it is, it's always come together natural for me. And I just don't even like to think about it that way.
Yeah.
Like, even with the IMANU thing, it's like, I mostly contributed vocals to that song. I did some production stuff, but like we're both the same type of artist. So we both realized that like, yo, we're going to make this song together and we're just going to put it out. IMANU and Grabbitz, like, you know, you initiated this whole thing. Sure, but go first.
Right.
You put your name first. You locked it in with Dead Beats. You've got a relationship with Dead Beats and you want to put it out. Like, let's go. I want to do stuff, you know?
Yeah. That, I mean, I think, keeping it moving for sure is a key with any of that kind of stuff. And you're completely right too, that in any collab, regardless of who it's between or how it came about, you know, somebody's got the hot hand. Like somebody, you know, usually what happens is like, maybe you start an idea together and then one person goes off and, you know, crushes the rest of it. Or maybe somebody comes in with an idea that's already really good. And it's just like, I need help finishing it. It could happen in so many different ways. But I think you're right. It's more about, the understanding and the respect between the actual collaborators.
Yeah. The real ones don't even ever talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Like even when it's like somebody like Rezz is one of my favorite people to make music with. We've got, you know, 2 songs out, others in the vault, and it's like, if I were to ever be like, yo, would you mind if I was like a, you know, whatever on that? Like, she'd just be like, what? Like we would, it's not even a topic of conversation. Cause it's just like when you have the same vision and you have the same goal to just make good art, it doesn't, you know, I do feel for some people who get stuck in that kind of like, you know, thing, but to them, I would say, you know, keep working on your craft. And if production is something that, you know, you want to get into and, you know, then keep working at it, you know, maybe start sending around full demos rather than vocals over chords or, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to go back to something you were saying much earlier too, it sounds like a lot of your successful collaborations, they started with the relationship first, right? Like it wasn't just shopping yourself around. It wasn't just, it was like meeting somebody, figuring out who they are, figuring out where you connect, and then you go work on something, right?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, sometimes it starts off in a different kind of like more manufactured industry type of way, but then the friendship grows from there, you know? Like Subtronics and I knew Subtronics' manager before I met Jesse, and he was like, hey, you want to try singing over this song? And then I'm like, yeah, sure. And that was like how we got our first collab. And, I'm a featured artist. I sang over Jesse's beat.
Right.
And then after that, you know, song did well and people gravitated towards that. Then it's like, hey, we got something, whatever this is works. So like, let's build on it and, you know, able to go up and perform with these massive artists. It's all good things.
Dude, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, you've been doing a bunch of big performances lately, right? Weren't you just at Red Rocks or you're about to be at Red Rocks?
We leave tomorrow. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah. Friday is Cyclops Rocks with Subtronics.
There you go.
Yeah. I get to do my own solo set and then I'm sure we'll rip something together.
That'll be great, man. Have you done Red Rocks before?
I did a back-to-back with Ray Volpe before at Red Rocks. I've never done a solo set, so I'm really looking forward to kind of just looking up at that big-ass crowd. It's going to be fun.
That'll be so fun, man. That's you and Ray together must have been fun, too. I love him.
Super fun. Yeah, Ray's a blast. We just got to, like, do this whole long travel day together from Cancun to stay in Bloom in San Francisco. And it was just a nightmarish day. And we had a lot of laughs. My bag got confiscated and all this crazy shit happened.
What happened with your bag?
Laughing. Dude, United can just, do all the stuff. But like, yeah, I had this like a little charging port on my bag and they wouldn't let me on the plane. But they were treating me like I was fucking trying to hijack it. It was crazy. Christ. They were like detained me. And I'm like, yo, I can't remove the battery off this bag for some reason. I just can't. So they had like tech guys trying to unscrew the whole bag and all this stuff. And then they ended up giving me this nice United duffel.
They actually gave you
the
a
bag just
United
stayed in
dollar.
Houston.
Oh my God.
But then, crazy enough, plot twist, the bag showed up at my doorstep 2 days ago.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting.
Weird.
That is weird.
How did we get from? Oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, I love it, man. That's
the beauty of the interview, man. You can go in any direction.
DJ's complaining about flights is, I think, is as old as time, man. Yeah. Everybody had. That's also my other. This is the last thing I'll say about airlines is that everybody has their favorite and their least favorite airline, but the reality that sits on top of all of that is that they're all the same and they're all bad.
Yeah.
That's always my favorite. It's like everyone defines their personality by like, oh, I only fly Delta because I hate American or whatever it is. They're all the same. They all
only
suck.
Fly Spirit.
Yeah,
I have a Spirit credit card. I only fly Spirit.
Ooh, I like that. That's being an individual, man. Going Spirit only. When's the last time you flew Spirit Airlines? That's a question. Never really?
Never flown Spirit.
Interesting, man.
Yeah, no. Should I have?
I mean, no, it's terrible. I wouldn't recommend it, but I feel like, everyone, you fall down the stairs once or twice. Like I've flown Spirit a couple times. I would never do it for any flight longer than like an hour. But, sometimes it's like, oh, it costs $10 and I'll be there in an hour. Sure.
That's true. I should look at that, actually.
Every once in a while, it can be okay. But it's not great.
I just learned that Delta flight attendants are the only airline that gets paid while boarding and deplaning. So there's a better chance of Delta employees being friendlier while you're deplaning and boarding because the other ones just don't.
I saw
get
that
paid
too.
Until the door gets shut.
I saw that too, which is really interesting because I don't. They have a union, like all of them have a union. So I'm surprised they don't all get the same benefits. But that's really interesting.
Should have a flight attendant on the podcast.
God, that would be, I'd love that. I'd love like maybe like a pilot who flies private jets and has all the stories of like the super famous musicians jetting around. That could be fun.
You get like Diddy's pilot or something.
Oh, man. Well, I bet that guy has some stories, but I don't know if we can legally tell them.
It'll be gut-wrenchingly horrible.
Yeah. That guy, a lot of trips to like small islands, probably.
I bet.
Oh, man. What else did I want to ask you? Oh, you mentioned right at the start of this that you had done a bunch of music for Valorant. And I know you've done music for gaming, for TV. And I just wanted to ask you in general, like, how did you get into doing that? And how do you approach music for games, music for TV? Like, is it a similar writing process? Do you feel like you write differently when that's involved?
It depends. They're not grouped together. So if it's something like for television or for like a trailer, you do kind of shift the way you write. You can start the ideas any way that you want, but like there seems to be a systematic like arrangement that gives you the best shot at securing some sort of trailer type of placement, which is like, how we just got the Walking Dead placement with the song Sky Turns Red. That was written long ago and it was written for a trailer. Essentially, like I wrote it with my friend Jason and Mark, and that was the purpose of it. It's kind of like, it starts off, it's got like an intro and then it's got a middle area and then it's got this end area, which is kind of funny because it didn't change the arrangement for when I released the song, because I think that's kind of a cool arrangement. It's a little bit different. It's not like you don't hear the chorus a bunch of times. It's like, it's just this new thing. The gaming stuff, I got introduced to Riot through my manager at the time knew one of the people over at Riot, and they had exchanged an email just off of some random thing, I think, and he had seen that he manages Grabbitz, and he said, "Oh, we love someone else, and we would love if maybe we could talk about him making a song for our Champions anthem that in some ways kind of resembles that type of arrangement, that type of song. So I just churned out a bunch of ideas and we rolled with them. That's kind of it. I mean, that one, that was more of like what I would kind of consider just one of my songs, you know, because they wanted something that already was something that was very true to me, you know? So that just built a long relationship of doing work with them over and over again, you know, and we've done it 3 years in a row now. And I'm about to go to Shanghai to do the Valorant music event there. And, you know, it's been a wonderful partnership with them over the years. And I think that kind of stuff just spirals, you know, like you get linked up with one person or you do one thing and it just grows from there.
Yeah, Ben, and it's so cool too. I would imagine, I mean, you tell me, but in my head, I hear you talking about, going overseas to do like a Valorant music event. That sounds super fun and, you know, obviously different than, say, going to Red Rocks and playing a show with Subtronics. And I think it's just an important note that, like, there's so many avenues to get out your music and to get people to hear what you do. And I think it's very valuable to not get trapped into thinking that there's only one way to be successful or there's only one correct way to do it, because I think it shuts doors on cool opportunities like that.
Definitely. Oh, yeah. No, the only one way to do it is to just focus on your craft. That is undeniably the one way to get any of these opportunities. And when you get them, you're prepared because you have done the laborious man hours of just learning and failing and making something that sounds horrible and trying to make it sound better and then scrapping it and then making new ideas and then discovering new ways of coming up with new songs and then discovering new ways to program drums and, oh, this is how I should do this and this is how I should do that. It's a never ending rabbit hole of knowledge. No one will ever completely figure it out. And like, if you put in those hours, then yes, you are free. Like, you can get an opportunity with this gaming company that comes and wants what you do because you've done the work, you know? So yeah, like I love when all of these different things kind of pop up because I'm ready, you know? You want to throw me in a session with somebody that wants like some cool chorus or something, like I'll just go in there with 1,000, there's 1,000 choruses, you know, just going all the time. So it's cool. Yes. And I would agree. There is no one way. You should never pigeonhole yourself into anything. I preach that a lot to people just because, you know, some people say, well, you have to pick something. You have to pick something. I'll forever defy that. I just don't care how much success somebody has that goes by that route. I'm happy for you.
Totally.
You know, I'm not going to go that route.
Yeah, of course. Of course. And that's the thing. I think people who have success through that route will tell you that's the way to get success because that's what worked for them. But yes. I think we all know, at least in the logical parts of our brain, that, you know, you can't just copy what somebody else did because they already did it, you know?
It's so individual, the paths to success for different people. There might be similarities, but they're all so different. That's why it's so tough to just study somebody's trajectory and try and figure out where they broke or where this moment was. Because just most of the time, they don't even know. They're surprised. Right. They're like, yo, one time I was playing a show for 200 people. 3 months from then, you know, I got a couple of cool opportunities and I'm playing shows for 3,000 people. It's like, there's no mathematical equation for it.
Yeah, consistency is really the only thing
it does matter. Yes.
Yeah, that's all it is. I wanted to ask you, I meant to ask this earlier, because we talked about how you got into production and your journey there. But I also wanted to ask you, how did you develop your singing voice and your particular approach to vocals? Because you have you have a great voice, obviously, but I also feel like such a identifiable sound and a style and a tone to your voice. And I was curious where that came from.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that a lot. It's really nice to hear. I think it was just that I've been singing for so long, and I've really have been singing forever. And I think that it's just picking up on nuances of what I love about hearing people sing. And for some reason, I've always had the ability to pick up on nuances of things that I love and then apply them in my own way, which is most of the time wrong.
Right.
But then that becomes original in some way. So, I could combine 4 different things that I learned from 4 different singers. And then when you hear it, you're like, oh my God, there's so much nuance in there. And I'm like, well, it's really because that's how Chris Cornell does his S's. That's how Kurt Cobain does his screams. And that's how fucking, anyone else, that's how, Robert Plant did this and that and all that stuff. And it's just because I loved that about that. So it's really kind of just about paying attention to detail and knowing what you love and then recreating it. And I always tell that to people who want to learn how to produce beats and stuff too. I always say, recreate what you love and fail over and over and over again. Just try and literally carbon copy something that you love just for the practice. And then, eventually you tried to make like a Louis the Child song and you made something really cool, Dude,
and what you just said about the nuances of people's voices and picking out specifically what attracts you to them, I think is such a valuable note for production too, in terms of, okay, you love Skrillex, but like, what is it that Skrillex is doing that is really pulling you in, right? Like it's that deep analysis, deep listening thing where you can be like, oh, what I actually love is like the way he processes his snares or whatever it is. Sure. And then if you can pick out those details, pick a couple details from a couple people you really like, you put them together, and that's going to be your sound. That's maybe a secret people don't know too, is that it's just like, it's just a few tricks we pick up and you combine them in ways they haven't been combined before.
Sure. And with the voice as well, the voice is so, we could talk for an hour about vocals and singing. The one thing that I've been trying to do lately is I've been trying to strengthen my voice and my pitch centers. So like you could even literally just play a note over and over again on the piano and just match the pitch of it, just so that your voice gets more and more, the DNA within your vocal cords get more and more attuned to just hitting that pitch center and strengthening my voice, which shout out to Dave Stroud has been helping me a lot lately, giving me warm-ups and he's been really great about trying to teach me like exactly how it works in there. This is like the next level. Like my whole life was always just sing and emote as purely as possible.
Did you ever take lessons before this?
There's always been like 1 or 2 times here and there, but never like consistently, but it's more about like get it strong enough. The most important thing that I can do as a singer is to forget about singing good so that you can give the best performance. You can give the most emotion, because like you're literally singing things that have words attached to them that mean stuff. So if you don't mean the words,
right,
there's an acting component in it as well. You can have the best voice in the world, but if you can't sing like "Come Back to Me" like you want someone to come back to you, then you don't have that thing in there,
Yeah, it's true, man.
So
no, that's interesting.
All the same with production too. You learn production and get really good at it so that you can give the most emotion and have the biggest toolbox. And you learn as much about singing and get your voice as strong as possible so that you can have a bigger toolbox and just be yourself,
Absolutely, man. That's what all those hours of practice are for, whether it's singing, producing, any of that. It's so that you can show up on the day you need to show up and put in a good showing. I think that's,
Yes.
yeah, it's all about that. Well, dude, the last thing I wanted to ask you before we get out of here, this is a broad question. There's no wrong answer, but you know, this whole conversation, looking at your whole catalog, it's like you've put out a ton of music. It's all really interesting music. It's all very consistent. You've got such a great like signature sound, if you want to call it that. And talking to you, it seems like you have such a great head on your shoulders, like a good attitude, a lot of wisdom you've figured out over many years of this career. I just want to ask broadly, like, what do you do when this all gets stressful? Or like, what do you do on the days where you're not feeling it or you're down about something? Because a long career in music is hard for anybody. But I'm always curious when it seems like somebody really does have a good attitude about it and got a lot figured out. Like, was there anything you learned along the way that helped with that?
Sure. And appreciate it, again, all of that.
Yeah,
but yeah, it gets hard for anyone to maintain the same amount of output over certain periods of time. And I would say that if there's any sort of discouragement or stress, I like to focus in on just what can I control, because most of the time you're stressed out about something that you can't. And you're like, why won't more people like my stuff? Why won't more people comment my stuff? How come I can't? How are more people not hearing this or hearing that? Or how are more people not seeing this? And all my algorithm is like shot and like all this stuff. You can create more quality content, and you can be creative, and you can do things that are productive, that help you grow. You can practice. You can, go, don't do music, go exercise, do something that is not wallowing in whatever it is that you can't control. And I truly do believe that like the only people that fail are the ones that quit. 100%. It's a struggle constantly. And everyone feels the same way. There could be an artist that you look up to that is like on the top of the actual world. It could be Post Malone. It could be whatever. And he might be worried about something that you would have no inkling that he would ever be worried. He might be like, oh, we didn't sell the fourth night at the Kia Forum. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? It happens everywhere. And it's really all just go. You got to just keep going.
I love that, man. Yeah, that's I preach a lot of that same stuff. So it's nice to hear it from you, man. And
hell yeah,
dude, thank you for doing this, man. Is there anything else you want to get out there before we say bye?
Go listen to Fire, me and IMANU's new song. It's awesome. If you're in the same city that I'm coming and touring, come hang out with me. It's a fun time always. And this is great. Expect a lot more music. I've got a lot more stuff coming, and it's always fun and cinematic and cool and has cool stuff. We put a lot of time into it. So I really appreciate the interview, dude. I appreciate the time.
Oh, dude, I right back at you, man. This was super fun, and let's definitely do it again, man. Stay in touch.
Yeah, hell yeah.
All right, man. Take care.
All
Have
right,
fun
man.
at Red
Talk
Rocks
soon. Yeah, keep in touch.
All right.
Thank you.
Peace out.
Peace.
Man.